Welcome to the 2022-2023 back to school night at Fox Hill. I'm sorry that you weren't able to be here tonight, but hopefully this will answer some of your questions. Just to get started, here are some basics about Fox Hill that you may or may not know. Students can be dropped off at 7:30, but they're tardy by 7:50. Here's the phone number to call if your student is absent. I like to know that too so that I can send work or let you know what's going on in the room, but definitely tell the office as well. Um, Birthday treats have to be store-bought and individually portioned. So, for example, cupcakes are fine, but a sheet cake is not fine because someone has to cut that and actually hand it out. Mrs. Lindsay will review all of the things before the kids pass them out. I have them do that at lunch. So they take it to lunch with them, they pass them out, and that's kind of how that works. Other information includes that visitors have to sign in, you have to have an ID. Right now, there aren't any specific protocols except for the ones from the CDC about if you've been in contact with somebody or you're actually positive for COVID, but definitely pay attention to that in case those change. If you're picking up a student, you have to have your ID and you have to be listed in Skyward. And that's true for regular parent pickup or if you are going to pick them up for like an appointment or something like that. You cannot stay for a recess. You're not allowed to be on the playground with us. If you want to have lunch with students, you might want to call the office and see what the current protocol for that is because sometimes it's different. I would hate for you to show up for lunch and then that not work out. So, lunch is a maybe, but recess is a no. If your student is going to be picked up differently than usual, you need to call the office by 1 o'clock every day. If you don't do that, it's harder to make sure that your student gets to where he or she is going. I appreciate you letting me know, but to be honest, if you let me know after our lunchtime, which ends around 12 o'clock, I probably won't see it. So you want to make sure that that goes through the office. Otherwise, you might show up and your student might have already gone on the bus. We have e-learning days this year. There are no half days or early dismissal days, but there are the e-learning days, and the first one is coming up pretty soon in a few weeks. They're asynchronous, so I'll go over it with the kids. They'll have a list of things to do on the different Canvas pages, and I would plan for, depending on how quickly your student works, 2 or 3 hours of work, and then that's it. But they'll be able to do that whenever they want with no meetings. But the state passed a law that said we can't have more than a certain number of e-learning days. So anything beyond those scheduled days will be synchronous, which means if we have a snow day in December or a snow day in February, your student will likely have to log in and join some Zooms. So just be aware of that. Obviously, more information will be forthcoming later on should that be needed. Make sure you're following the guidelines. I know that the kids are sitting in groups and we're all in line together, but I'm kind of big on maintaining a distance and keeping your hands to yourself anyway. So that's just something that I sort of push before COVID, and I continue to do that. Washing your hands. We clean off our desks every day, so we still understand that COVID is real and it's happening. And if you have questions about that, you can let me know. So for language arts, we as a school district use the Lucy Calkins program, and that just basically means there's a unit of study that we're doing. I'll do a mini lesson, and then the kids will practice. And I'm following what regular fifth grade is doing. Only we're doing it better. We're doing it harder. We're going deeper. We're reading harder books. We're getting things done a little bit more quickly. We also have book clubs. Book clubs for the regular ed don't start for a couple of months, but we've already started our first club. In fact, we're almost done with the first one, and that's been more of a practice. I start to grade the work after the first one, and we'll talk a little bit more about book clubs later. The groups are flexible, meaning the book club groups, I put you in those loosely based on your reading level, but we're all close enough in here that there's not a huge difference. Um, but that's not your group forever. I might group you differently for different things. For writing, it's informative, narrative, and persuasive, and that's also the Lucy Calkins program, which is nice just because they sort of go together. I will say we travel a little faster than the rest of fifth grade, so sometimes we'll end up squeezing in a few more reading units and a few more writing units than the other classes in fifth grade, but we do the same things they do. We just sometimes get through it a little more quickly. And we'll write a lot in here. I'm hoping to start our grammar review pretty quickly. It takes a little while to get into a routine for writing, but eventually we'll start having one really small grammar topic a week. Things like starting with capital letters and parts of speech and using quotation marks and just little reviews that are quick that help them make sure that their writing is grammatically correct. Our vocabulary lists are based on Greek and Latin prefixes and suffixes, and that will help them become better readers and also just have a better vocabulary in general. And as I've said earlier in the year, those go in 3 week cycles. First week is just kind of getting to know the words. We do activities in class. The second week is more focused on the spelling, and then the third week is more focused on what it means. So you want to make sure that your student is practicing those things at home. For math, we do use a math workshop model, which means that not everybody is doing the same thing and not everybody is doing things at the same time. We have Mrs. McKinley here for math, and she runs a DMR group, which is mostly review, while I'm running a group of current stuff. You definitely want to keep working on math facts. Nobody has passed all of them, although lots of us are close. It makes a difference in the long run. It's not so much not being able to pass the test in a minute, it's more about the kids who still can't figure them out in a relatively quick way when we're doing work. It's the kids who, when you say 6 times 8, they're not sure. And then they say things like 42. So if your student is just getting, missing 1 or 2 on the test because they didn't get to it, that's a different issue than the students who get them wrong or who have more than half of them left. So no matter what your student tells you, you should definitely still be working on math facts until they pass. And we will take a quiz the first week of every month until your student passes. I did start with weekly math homework. You'll get it the first day of the week, usually a Monday, and then it'll be due on Friday. It's going to be computation. The math program that we're using is a sixth grade math curriculum, and it assumes that you can already do all of the computation without much assistance. And so I feel it's important for us to practice those things so that we're more comfortable with them. We are using the sixth grade curriculum, but we also take time to look back at the fifth grade standards. That's one of the reasons why we do a DMR every day and have the quiz on Friday. That's a fifth grade math assessment, because I want to make sure that we're not missing that, because sometimes what has happened when we've accelerated it is students have missed things. Eureka Squared is new to us this year, and unfortunately, it does take a little while for teachers, including me, to get used to that. And you just might notice that the students say, well, one day we did this, and the next day we did something totally different. That's just kind of to be expected until we get used to the new curriculum. Dreambox. You can work on Dreambox at home, although you do have to use the link from their portal. You can't go to it directly, and 5 lessons a week are required. If your student is doing what they're supposed to be doing here at school, then you won't have a problem getting those 5 lessons a week. And again, also we have the DMR, which I will change at any point if I feel like we need to. Right now, we're not doing very many stations, but we will. We've started Friday games and things like that. So basically, if your student is struggling with one thing, then they'll go to a station for that one thing instead of having to go to a group that covers all of it. For social studies, it's fifth grade, and in Indiana is U.S. geography or United States year. So geography, history, government, econ. There is a social studies book. It's rather beefy, so we'll use that a lot. But you can also access it online. I'll talk a little bit more about the 50 states menus, but we do a lot of social studies in here. We tend to go back and forth between social studies and science, alternating units with the 50 states going all the time. So we will go back and forth. Right now we're doing science, and then next we'll start with our early exploration in Native Americans. So we do a lot of book work, we do a lot of projects, we do a lot where they get to choose kind of how they want to show me what they've learned. We use full option science here in Washington Township, so the kits come regularly. Like for example, they drop the kits off, it's got all of the materials in it. We use them for several weeks, and then we have to ship them back. So we do have to stay to a schedule for that. We're almost finished with Earth and Sun, and then we've got a few more throughout the year, and they're fun, It's hands-on science. There's hands-on stuff. There's reading stuff. There's group stuff. So there's a lot of different things happening in science. Health is, there's no formal curriculum for health. We'll cover a lot of topics because I feel like it's important. And a couple of years ago, they took health off the report cards. So I use that as a science grade. We also will have an IUP/UI nursing student who's just a volunteer that comes through. We get one every couple of, like, we'll have one for maybe 5 or 6 weeks, and then we won't have one for a while, and then we'll have one, and they're only here for about an hour once a week. They sort of help with clerical things, or they play games with the kids. But another thing they do is they do a health presentation. Aside from the projects, I would say 40 to 60 minutes of homework is enough. Really, every student is different, but you should be reading 20 minutes every night, filling out the reading log. You should be practicing math facts every night. You should be practicing the vocabulary words and then the state capitals and all of that as needed. You also want to be aware that book clubs are already going, and your student has time to work on that at school. Depending on how quickly he or she reads, maybe they can get it done at school, maybe they can't. But you really need to be checking in with your student about a number of things, and honestly not just taking their word for it, because sometimes they're not altogether truthful, but also sometimes they genuinely have forgotten or they're confused, and it's easier just to tell you, yeah, I did that. Sometimes when we don't finish stuff at school, I make them take it home. Sometimes I don't. It really just depends on the situation. I also sometimes will send math homework home for a second time, or math assignments home that I graded that they didn't do well on, and say, hey, I need you to do this again. So you would want to look for that in their mail. For classroom management, I'm really terrible with Classroom Dojo. I just want to be upfront about that. I really would rather just stick with the Foxheads, but we've had so much talking going on that I have tried to use it so that they would understand and curb the need to talk while I'm talking and talk in between every time I take a breath. So I am trying to do that, but I love to use Dojo for pictures and things like that so that you can ask your student how their day was. And instead of them just saying it was fine or it was whatever, you can say, oh, I saw that you did this. So that's why we do that. So I am trying to do like a conversion for the Foxhill, for the points to the Foxheads. Negative points, I'm not punishing them for negative points. There's no consequence for that. At this point, it's just so that you know and I know and they know that they talk too much. Talking's not the end of the world, but certainly something we need to kind of keep an eye on. I do a mystery motivator every day where I pull something out, like lined up quietly, or closet doors were closed, or desks are clean, or floor is clean. And so if that happens during the day, then you get 5 minutes towards the free time Friday, and that's as a whole group. I'm bigger on positive reinforcement. I don't have too many negative consequences, but you'll hear from me if something is going on that needs to be fixed. The Foxheads, they turn in, go for individual prizes as well as whole group prizes. Responsibility. So fifth grade is very different than fourth grade because fourth grade was different than third grade, and every grade should bring a little more responsibility. One thing I'm noticing is that many students are not completing their book club assignments, and so let me know if you've got questions about that. But students get a calendar that tells them what to read and when to read it, what assignment to do, and what day of the week they meet. And they're given time in class to do this, and they can also use it for their 20 minutes in their reading log. And long story short, students are choosing to read whatever they want to read and then not completing the book club work. And so I think it's a good idea if you just ask your student, what book are you reading for book club? Have you done the work? And then if I need to, I'll communicate with you that they are not doing the work, and I will start making them do it at home so that you have to make sure they're doing it. So it's easier all around if students just do it when I give it to them. Like I said earlier, the math homework is part of the responsibility. I don't want to be overkill with the homework. I don't want them to be spending forever on it. So it's one assignment for the whole week. You can do it the first night, you can do it the next night, you can spread it out over all the nights. It doesn't matter, but I am grading it and it does need to be turned in by Friday. They can turn it in early if they want. The 50 states menu, I started talking to students about that this week, and I'm happy to answer questions for parents if they have those. I'll be sending a copy home in the weekly update email, but it's basically a long-term project where the students have to pick a state within the assigned region. For example, this time it's Northeast, so they might pick New York. They have about 6 weeks to complete 6 assignments um, where they get to choose from a few choices. And some students absolutely understand what I'm talking about, and some students are still a little bit confused. But by the end of next week, most of them will understand. Also, we do have an assignment notebook. I'm currently not asking that parents sign it. If that's something that needs to start happening, I can, but I know in middle school that's not something that they ask them to do. And my goal isn't to add more work to you. My goal is to add so that there's enough communication back and forth. That's just what we are doing this year. I know it's sort of weird to give information in this way. So if you have any questions, you can let me know. Um, I'm always available by email and Parent Square and Dojo. I admit I'm not as good with the phone calls. I'm happy to call you back. I just know that's a little tougher for me to get to during the day, so I can do it a little faster if it's on something where I get to text. I've already sent out a link to set up parent teacher conferences for September 21st. If you need that link, it'll be coming again on Friday in the weekly update, and then I'll send it a few more times over the next couple of weeks. Conferences will be in the morning here at Fox Hill in person, and then in the afternoon, I'll be doing them virtually via Zoom. I think this year is off to a great start, and I can't wait to spend the rest of the year getting to know your student and helping them grow.